ABC 7 Extra. Good evening. I'm Saul Saenz. The privately funded border barrier gained national notoriety for several reasons. It was built with private funds. It was built faster than government-funded barriers along the borderland, and it came under swift scrutiny by several groups, the mayor of Sunland Park, and in part, the U.S. International Boundary Water Commission, or IBWC, as well as the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, weighed in on the private barrier. Tonight, we take a deeper look into the construction of the barrier, the gate, the group vowing to continue patrolling near the barrier, as well as the group opposed to private groups doing the government's job. I want to show you something real quick. This is a privately funded border barrier. It runs near the Rio Grande along all the way up to a mountainside near Cristo Rey. The cost for building a half mile of the barrier is nearly $6 million funded through private donations. And we're now hearing plans to extend the length of the barrier, a barrier which met opposition once ABC 7 broke the story. And we're now hearing plans to extend the barrier. And as I said, we broke the story quite some time back. Let's listen.
The owner of the property did come to the city of Sunland Park and submitted an application for a wall in that area. The staff has been reviewing those particular documents and have determined that at this point it is incomplete and that the construction on the wall at this point is in violation of city ordinance.
Claims by Sunland Park City officials that members of We Build a Wall did not have the proper permits to build a barrier were doused when both sides announced they were working together to resolve those issues, and construction continued until it was finished in early June.
The stop work order was lifted by the city yesterday at 4 o'clock, but since we didn't have any of the machinery on site at that point, we decided to wait until this morning to stop. The relevant work permits were issued by the city this morning.
But then came controversy surrounding the barrier gate, which leads to Monument 1, an international spot marking the boundaries between New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico. IBWC says it needs access to an area near Monument 1 for maintenance on the American Dam, as well as dredging near the Rio Grande. IBWC claimed the gate was closed and locked by members of We Build a Wall. They called in Doña Ana County Sheriff's deputies to open the gate and lock it in an open position.
That is absolutely false. At no point in time has the gate at the lower part of the wall ever been locked shut. It has been pulled into the shut position, but has never been locked.
Once again, both sides agree to continue working together to resolve permitting issues. Now the Guardian Patriots, a group which splintered off from the Constitutional Patriots, is weighing in. You may recall the Constitutional Patriots, a group of private militia-like citizens, were forced off a campsite at the base of Cristo Rey by both Sunland Park Police as well as Union Pacific Railroad Police. Guardian Patriot members vow to continue patrolling land near the privately funded barrier until the gate is closed shut to prevent anyone from entering the U.S. illegally.
The only people that are going to benefit are the cartel and the people trying to come in through here. What does that tell you? Who are we putting first? Is this an invasion? Is it okay for us to have open borders? Did America vote for open borders? This is absolutely ridiculous. This should not be happening. This is us fighting our own government over the fact that who should have the right here? The illegals to come in here? Is it fair to Border Patrol? Is it fair to America?
Joining us now in our ABC 7 studios is Jen Benvie. Benvie is a spokesman for the Guardian Patriots, the group which splintered off from the Constitutional Patriots. And we thank you so much. We also saw you in our piece just a short second ago. We also want to welcome in the Executive Director of the ACLU, Mr. Peter Simonson. Thank you so much for joining us from Albuquerque.
My pleasure.
Let's start with you, Mr. Benvie. Let's talk about this private barrier and all the attention, all the focus that it's been getting. Your thoughts on that, as well as the gate, whether it should remain open or shut.
Well, I'm happy that the wall's built. Guardian Patriots have been out there long before the We Build the Wall people came out there and decided to build the wall. It was amazing when we first set foot in Sunland Park at the response of Trump's national emergency that we kind of vowed as a group that we would not leave until there was a border wall built. And amazingly enough, we now have a border wall. And not only is it just a border wall, it's the best border wall that's ever been built along the 2,200 miles of the U.S. border.
And y'all are talking about extend. Well, not you, but build a wall.
We build the wall
one extends it.
is talking about that. They're trying to get anything they can get done to get more wall up as fast as possible. The thing that I find a little frustrating about this is that Americans paid for this, not the taxpayers, Americans.
Private funds.
The government told us they didn't have any money. They said, we can't afford to build a wall. Okay, so Americans stepped up. Americans got the job done, and they did a heck of a job. It's one of the most technologically advanced walls that's ever been built.
Let's go to Mr. Peter Simonson. Mr. Simonson, your thoughts on this privately funded border barrier and the fact that there are talks now about either keeping that gate open or shut. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Sure. Well, at the end of the day, we don't have a direct concern about the building of a wall on private property, except that it's just a horrific monstrosity that crosses the landscape and scars the landscape for the community that lives there, the border residents who enjoy that natural landscape there. But beyond that, I think our key concern is that We Build the Wall took it upon themselves to extend their wall right across federal property that belongs to each and every American, ourselves included, people that live in that community, without any prior authorization. And even now, they still don't have a permit for that wall. And contrary to what Mr. Benvie said, in fact, that gate was in fact locked. IBWC, when they were notified of that, actually sent folks out to cut the chains to that gate, force it open, and chain it open. And we think that gate needs to come down. We don't think that an outside group like We Build the Wall, funded by Chris Kobach, Steve Bannon, that they should have the opportunity to use our border communities, our border landscape as a theater for this political stunt that they're playing, and much less that they should cut off access for those communities to a historically and culturally significant monument.
Okay, Mr. Simonson and Mr. Benvie, we're going to continue the conversation. We're going to pick up where we left off and ask you, gentlemen, of course, first of all, Mr. Simonson, why you are against this particular gate being left open or closed. We're going to take a quick break. You're watching ABC 7 Extra, where news comes first. Welcome back to ABC 7 Extra. I also want to welcome back Mr. Jim Benvie, who's right here in our ABC 7 studios, who's with the Guardian Patriots. And we also want to welcome back Mr. Peter Simonson, who's with the ACLU. We want to pick up the conversation. Mr. Benvie, you just heard what Mr. Simonson said, is that there should have been no reason to lock that gate closed when that's on federal property?
Actually, the gate wasn't locked. I was there. It was closed shut, but it wasn't locked, okay? They slid the gate open. They then put a padlock on it and locked it. The thing is, We Build the Wall, the Guardian Patriots, we want to move on to other areas. I know they do as an organization. They're not interested in controlling access to who gets in or out of the wall. That is for the Border Patrol. That's for Department of Homeland Security. It is a gift to them from America. Now, if they want to put a lock on there and put keys on it so they can access it in the rare moments that they need to get in there to maintenance the dam, I have no problem with
However, should that gate remain open or shut?
I think that's at the discretion of them. Obviously, having the gate open it defeats the purpose of having a wall. That is a VIP entrance for the cartel to bring in human trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking. I've documented several accounts of this daily and nightly on my Facebook Live videos. It's a problem child. That's up to the Border Patrol, though, ultimately, how they want to regulate that. That's why it's a gate. But this excuse about government property in a Landmark 1, there's less than 20 people that I've ever seen even drive down there to the Landmark 1. And now they're treating it like Yellowstone National Park.
Let's give Mr. Simonson an opportunity to respond. Your response to that, Mr. Simonson?
How ironic that somebody who doesn't even live in our state, who doesn't even live in the borderlands, would claim that he knows better who should have access and how to a monument that is a reflection of the binational culture and history of the people that live in that area. I just think that's the height of irony. We should talk a little bit about the truth of the folks who are coming across the border. Mr. Benvie keeps on referring to these folks as if they're all drug smugglers and such. The great majority, even by CBP, the Border Border Patrol's own statistics show that the great majority of people coming across are actually families and unaccompanied minors fleeing conditions of unimaginable violence in their home countries.
Only
Places like
10%
Honduras and
qualify for
Salvador.
asylum. 90% are fraudulent. They're fraudulently 90%.
You're not going
10%.
to. You can spout your
Right
lies
now,
on your
I
Facebook
can tell you
site
right
as
now,
you
Mr.
wish.
Simonson,
But in
Mr.
a
Simonson,
public forum,
Mr.
you
Simonson,
are going.
Mr. Simonson,
Yes.
I can tell you right now, when there's back and forth,
Yes,
there's absolutely no way our viewers can understand what we're talking about. I'm going to give Mr. Benvie a chance to respond to what you just said about whether or not some of these immigrants, some of these families cause or have some sort of threat against the U.S. Mr. Benvie?
Yes, 10% that are coming in, I sympathize. I would write a check. They're legitimately, they would meet the credible fear factor. Those are DHS and Border Patrol numbers, not Jim Benvie. Secondly, 90% of the rest of them that are coming in, if there was a judge in a trailer sitting right there, it is believed by DHS, Border Patrol, Homeland Security, everybody's in agreement that they would not qualify, they would be deported. So the other thing is, in that we have 5 to 7% that are criminals, that are repeat offenders coming across the border, going back and forth habitually.
Okay. Let's give Mr. Simonson an opportunity to respond. Your response to what Mr. Benvie just said.
Are there people who have committed crimes or commit crimes when they're in the United States? Sure. But that's true of any general population. The point is the great majority of the people, the vast majority of people who are coming across to this border, whether they receive asylum or not, are people who are fleeing conditions of violence. They're being threatened by drug cartels. They're being threatened by gangs. We've represented a number of these families. A Guatemalan gentleman, indigenous Mayan, beaten up by a group of Latinos in his home community, threatened with murder if he didn't flee. He comes to this country, wastes away in immigration detention for 1.5 years with a traumatic brain injury, separated from his son. These are the kinds of stories we hear every day from families that are fleeing. And to treat them as if they are all criminals, and much less to actually hold them hostage against their will in the dead of the night in a remote part of the border, surrounded by military-clad people with semi-automatic weapons who are concealing their identity goes against everything that this country stands for.
Mr. Simonson?
Our commitment to freedom, our commitment to fair treatment of the people who come to this country seeking protection from violence.
Let's give Mr. Benvie a chance to respond to what you just said.
Okay, while I agree with him, on some of the very minute details that is a humanitarian crisis, what I don't agree with him on is the fact that this is a national emergency. There's a big difference. This is a national emergency. We have people from all over the world showing up at our border, all 2,200 miles of it. We have a strained Border Patrol. We have processing facilities.
But you heard what Mr. Simonson said about a military-type group.
Okay, well, me and him disagree with that as well, because you know what? We don't point guns at people. Holding guns, carrying guns is anybody's right, any citizen here. As the American Civil Liberties Union, you should know this, civil rights, it's your right in New Mexico to carry a gun. Now, why? Because we do have dangerous cartels. You just said it. Dangerous cartels that operate right on the other side of that wall in Sunland Park.
But he was referring to is detaining folks.
Oh, we don't. Yeah, we listen. We ask them to stop and to sit down, and if they obey that verbal command, then we can. That's safer for all of the people involved, the illegal immigrants as well as Border Patrol. So if they're sitting down willingly, we give them some water. If they're hungry, we give them some food. And you know what? If Border Patrol can get there and we can keep them there so they're safe, not wandering through the hills and getting hurt at night, there's a big difference. That's humanitarian. That is not militant detaining or kidnapping, as you falsely accuse.
Okay, we're going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we're going to talk exactly about that. And we're also going to talk to someone who's actually down there, boots on the ground, and quite possibly let us know whether or not he's detaining some of the migrants or some of the folks who are seeking asylum or anyone who's crossing the border illegally near where we're standing right now over at the base of Cristo Rey. So when we come back, we'll introduce this gentleman to you, and we'll talk some more. We'll continue the discussion not only about the border barrier, but what's happening boots on the ground. We'll be right back. An extra. I also want to welcome back our guest. I want to start off with Peter Simonson, who's the executive director of ACLU in New Mexico. So welcome, sir. I also want to welcome back our guest here in the studio, Mr. Jim Benvie, who's with the Guardian Patriots. And I want to actually introduce Viper, who's actually with the Guardian Patriots, but you are boots on the ground. You are camped out somewhere in New Mexico near the Anapra Gap. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Let us know, first of all, why it is that you go by Viper and you don't want to use your actual name.
Well, we deal with different operations on the border. I mean, so people are going to see me, and I have a family to protect. I mean, we've got dangers on both sides of the border. So when I was asked to put a team together to go down there, when President Trump declared a national emergency on our southern border, that's what got my attention.
Okay. Let's go with Mr. Peter Simonson. Mr. Peter Simonson, I want you to respond to what Mr. Jim Benvie said before we went to break in reference to being able to be armed by the border, but you believe that this is actually intimidating some of the people who are coming across. Is that correct?
Oh, not just intimidating, but violating federal criminal laws. Mr. Benvie and his crew, and you don't need to take my word for it, you can watch the video. They've uploaded dozens upon dozens of videos to their Facebook site and various Facebook sites, and what they show is people in military outfits with their faces concealed, wearing badges that make them look as if they are official law enforcement, semi-automatic weapons, and announcing themselves to approaching families of immigrants as Border Patrol or police, telling people to sit in the dust, sometimes chasing people if they walk away. These folks don't understand that they're not being approached by Border Patrol. They think that they are being arrested by Border Patrol, and by all accounts, and we've received some public records from various law enforcement agencies in the area that would suggest that they have similar concerns that this group may be in violation of federal kidnapping laws, assault with a weapon, various other federal criminal laws, and obviously state criminal laws as well.
Okay.
We just want to make sure that the families that this group is detaining are not going to be put in harm's way and are not going to be the victim of some bloodbath because one of these vigilantes misuses his firearm or mistakes a movement by one of the immigrants as a threat to his safety.
Okay, let's bring the topic back at hand. We were talking about the border barrier and that gate, which either was open or closed. It is now open, as far as we know. Viper, let's get to you. Your thoughts on that gate, whether or not it should remain open or closed?
Well, like Jim said, that's primarily up to Border Patrol and the waterway over there. Mm-hmm. They can come to some agreement. I mean, we're all for it. That means if they come to an agreement, we can move on and take our missions. We can move on and take our mission somewhere else.
You are all still camped near the base of Cristo Rey, is that correct?
Yes.
Somewhere in and around the area?
Yes.
I think we spoke before this interview that you'd rather not reveal where exactly you're at. Why is that?
Well, for op security reasons. I don't want to put my men in harm's way. I mean, we're dealing with cartel out there, and most civilians don't understand, I'm a combat veteran myself. Okay, so this is what got my attention. Okay, so I understand rules of engagement. I understand the weaponizing, and all that is a deterrent. There's never around in any of the chambers, there's never around anywhere that would, how can you say it?
Hurt anyone.
Yeah.
You heard Mr. Simonson said is that when immigrants are crossing to turn themselves in to claim political asylum, they don't know the difference. They don't know if that gun is obviously if it has a bullet in the chamber
Correct.
or whatnot, and they're intimidated. Do you at any point in time point the gun at any of them?
No, never.
No.
My team, that's not how I manage the team on boots on the ground. Like Jim said earlier, there's a difference between carrying a gun and pointing a gun.
Yeah.
Two different maneuvers.
Okay.
And we've also consulted in response to his question. We work directly with Border Patrol, with DHS. They want civilian help. They have specific guidelines for how they want that help. And to just read the first part of the statement where it says, we do not encourage civilian help in enforcing immigrant or law enforcement. There's a second part of that statement that says, however, we do encourage citizens to observe and report. We have nothing but the safety of the workers at the site, the safety of the people who are crossing, whether they're coming in illegally, even if they're criminals. We're concerned about their safety, also the safety of the Border Patrol agents who are strained. And, the bottom line is we're in a national emergency, Sal, and the ACLU is interfering with American security, national security. That's the bottom line.
Let's get to Mr. Simonson. You just heard that. Mr. Benvie's claim is that you all are interfering with stopping some of the illegal entry into the U.S. Your thoughts? And also, I also want to ask you, does the ACLU plan to take any legal action against, first of all, that gate, whether or not it should be open or closed, and secondly, about the Guardian Patriots who are near the base of Mexico in Cristo Rey?
Let me ask a question of Mr. Benvie, if I could, or Viper as well. Are you all still detaining immigrant families? Are you actually still holding them when you come across them so that Border Patrol can pick them up?
There's a big difference between holding somebody against their will and holding them. If I ask you verbally, I see you breaking a law, and I ask you to halt, because we're going to show you where the Border Patrol is. You made reference to the fact that we were impersonating officers. On our videos, when you hear us say, I'm holding a camera,
could you just answer my question? Are you actually
there's Border Patrol right here. So this is important. It's important.
He's responding to your question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So,
go ahead, Mr. Simonson.
I just want to know, yes or no, simple question.
We do not, as you would say, kidnap. We don't kidnap and we don't hold people against their will, if that's your question.
Do you detain the families, and do you believe they feel threatened by your firearms?
Absolutely not. And you guys have had law enforcement interview immigrants, and you have not found one complaint of that because it's not happening. And we also have Border Patrol and other people supervising us. If they even thought we were doing one thing wrong, we wouldn't be there.
All right, here's what I do want to do, Mr. Simonson. I do want to respond to the question that I asked before we started this exchange. Does the ACLU plan to take any legal action, first of all, against that gate being left open or closed, or against members of the Guardian Patriots or any other group that, in your eyes, is detaining some of the migrants along the border?
First of all, we will take any and all actions within our power to protect the safety and the welfare and the fairness of treatment of immigrant families that are coming across the border, and let them be adjudicated as they should be properly by our legal federal authorities, not by private citizens who take the law into their own hands, but by immigration authorities. Likewise, as it concerns the wall or the gate, our main concern is the gate. We think it needs to be removed. We think closing it or opening it, that's not the issue. It needs to be removed, and we are still exploring whatever options we may have.
So again, obstructing with national security. That's what you're talking about. Obstructing with national security. Why do you call yourself the American Civil Liberties Union when you're not protecting America?
It's not just we build the wall. It actually belongs to all Americans.
Right. Government property said they didn't have money.
But if he's going to continue to interrupt me, I can't answer your questions.
Mr. Simonson, we are unfortunately have run out of time, but I do thank you for taking time to talk to us, especially joining us from Albuquerque. Mr. Benvie and Viper, thank you so much for taking time to join us this Sunday evening on ABC 7 Extra. I also want to thank our viewers for letting us into your homes and bringing you this story. For now, thank you so much.